Hello, and welcome to a video in which I introduce a workflow to how to use a bus compressor in Atmos while working in Pro Tools. The background here is that it's very difficult to bus process in Atmos while working in Pro Tools because you essentially have 128 buses going from Pro Tools to Atmos. And how can you make 128 channel limiter or 128 channel EQ or compressor and that sort of thing? So it's quite complicated. And in the process, the solution I'm going to use here is I'm going to create an object bed that is 7.1.4 so I can get all of my elements together in one bed. And then I'm going to bus limit the individual channels within that bed. And I'm going to link the limiters so they function as one. It's quite complicated. Let's dive in. First thing we need to do is create an object bed. I'm going to go to the Pro Tools IO, and I'm going to create a new path that is 7.1.4. And Atmos itself, by default, it's bus. Let's see if we can see it in the background here. In purple is actually 7.1.2. It does not include the rear height speakers. We're going to make one that does include it. And when you do this, make sure you put auto create subpaths. And that will create a bus, and I'm going to call it my, object bus. And I'm going to open the tab here, and I'm going to show, and there's a whole bunch open, not the one I wanted, that there are individual elements were created for left, center, right, left surround, right surround, all of that. And so all of the individual mono buses that feed the individual mono speakers are all created. Excellent. Next step, ignore this pink noise here. This is there just to demonstrate panning when I get to it. I'm going to create 12 mono aux inputs that are going to correspond to the individual channels in my new bed. So create them. And we better name them so you know exactly what's going on here. It's a little, actually before I name them, I'm going to source them. This will give us a better idea what the names actually are. I'm going to use what's called the bear claw, Command Option Shift, and I'm going to source these guys from the individual channels from that object bus. And so by doing one, as long as I hold Command Option Shift down, it will cascade them so it's left, center, right, left surround, right surround. And this particular order isn't necessarily the Atmos order of outputs, but it's the Pro Tools order, so we're going to follow this. So it is now cascaded all the way through my left top, right top, and my rear tops as well. So we got all the inputs right. Now I can go down here and name them what these actually are. This is going to be left. This is going to be center, and I'm just going to use abbreviations to make the video go faster. This is going to be left side, right side, and it's getting in the way here so I can't actually see. Left surround, that's left rear, right surround, and now the LFE, the sub, and now we're off to left top front, and right top front, and left top rear, and right top rear. So we've named the channels. We've got them coming in from that crazy bus. And the next thing is we need to route these out objects. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm going to hold Option down, Option Shift, which is due to selected, and I'm going to try to make all these guys go to objects at actually, let's try it this way. Command Option Shift, which is cascade, and I'm going to route them. They're not letting me do it. So it looks like, let's try again. There we go. Command Option Shift, and I'm going to route them object 11 onward. So it's just object 11, 12, 13, all the way through 22. Now we do need to pan these to where they're supposed to go. So left obviously is going to have to be panned to the left. right's going to be panned to the right. Oh, I haven't done this yet. Due to selected, Option Shift, turn on the actual objects for all of these. Forgot that. So left, center, right. Left surround's going to be off to the side. If you were building this template yourself, you may open up the actual panner and be a little bit more accurate. I'm going to do this rather quickly. The LFE is a little dangerous. You cannot go directly to the LFE. So what I'm actually going to do is change its object to feed the, take it out of object and feed it directly to the output that feeds the LFE on the bed. So bed LFE. So the LFE is not going to take a bus. It's going to go directly to the output that feeds the LFE, the bed. So this particular guy here. And now on to heights. We're going to take these guys. We are going to have to, the height channels, we are going to have to visit the panner and go height left. The next one over is going to have to be height right. So then we've got height left rear. And the last one is going to be height right rear. So these are now all, we've created an object bed. And here's what's cool about this. Now I can use the pink noise to demonstrate this. Pink noise I'm going to feed to this 7.1.4 object bed. And I'm going to turn a little sound on in here just so I can confirm where speakers are going. I can now open up my panner and I can pan it around my head. Yep. And I can bring it downstairs and pan it all around me. So I can, using a 7.1.4 bus, I can get to all the elements in terms of a bed. And this is now these blue guys here. I'm no longer using the purple object bed 10 channel without rear heights. I'm using the one I created with this 12 channel that does have rear heights. And these aux inputs here, they essentially serve as master faders for your whole mix. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to group them together. So I'm in Pro Tools here. Command G creates a group. As long I'm not in Pro Tools here. Let's try it again. Command G. I'm going to create a group here, and I'm going to call it object bed. And we'll come back to that master fader. We'll come back to this group in a moment. I just want to show you that they're all grouped together. Now, we want to put limiters or a bus compressor, whatever bus processing you want to do. In this case, I will just do a single limiter on all of these channels so they can all be limited the same. So what I'm going to do is hold Option Shift, which is due to selected, and I'm going to instantiate a limiter, and I'm going to use one of my favorites here, the FabFilter Limiter Pro L2, and I'm going to put it across all of those channels here in my 7.1.4 object bed. And they're all, the catch here is that each one of these limiters is going to work independently. And this is kind of a bummer. They're going to have different settings. That's no good. And they're all going to have a different side chain. They're all going to limit to each other their own particular threshold. So we're going to have to come up with a way to share a side chain between all those. First, let me deal with getting the settings to all work together. If we go back to the group here, down here on the lower left, double click, bring up the group on the dot there. And I'm gonna change some of the parameters of this group. I'm gonna no longer have the volume and mute work together in a group between all of them. In fact, I can turn off, I could leave that, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna turn off. I'm gonna turn off this all-important follow globals button, which means it will not match, I shouldn't have done that. It will not follow the global parameters you have assigned to all your channels. Instead, if you turn off follow globals, you can individually assign parameters to group together. And in this case, let's make insert number E, which is the one I have a plugin on, A, B, C, D, E. Let's have it grouped together. So all of these limiters in this group are going to share parameters. In fact, you could set this up if you wanted 2 limiters or compressor into a limiter, or maybe you wanted an EQ in a limiter. You could have multiple. You could have all these plugins be grouped across if you want. Let's just do one at a time here. Let's get this limiter. And by setting them controls and bypass, now watch what happens. I'm going to open up 2 limiters so you can see 2 at once here. If I change a parameter of 1, the other follows. In fact, all of them across the group have followed. So all I have to do is adjust 1 limiter and they're all following in the group, which is pretty powerful. Okay. Next thing, they need to share a common sidechain. They need to be triggered by the same audio input. And this is kind of complicated. What we're going to do is we're going to take all of these object bed masters, and I'm going to do to selected, and I'm going to send them to a single mono bus, an aux send here. You can see that. And maybe we want to go into our object bed here and make that particular aux send A shared across all of them. Let's do level and mute. So I'm going to name that sidechain. I'm going to right click. I'm going to name it SC for sidechain. And if I turn up 1, they all should follow because I just grouped together. I'm going to turn it up to unity. In fact, if in case that overwhelms it a little bit, I'll bring it down to -10. It'll give me a little headroom. They all should have gone to -10 because I grouped them together, and they did. Okay, let's now make a sidechain master fader. So over here, I'm going to say Command-Shift-N, which is mono aux input. Let's source this aux input from that mono bus sidechain, and let's send it to another mono bus. We'll do it mono bus 2, and I'm going to rename that to 2 limiters. And so this is just serving as a master fader. All the side chains are going to feed this master fader. I can trim it up or down if I want. And then it's going to go to limiters. And the final step here is to go into your limiter and set it to key from the 2 limiters side chain. And unfortunately, you are going to have to do this. This does not follow the group. So you're going to have to manually do this 12 times. But I'm setting the key input for FabFilter here for all 12 of these guys to come in from the key input. I'm sorry, coming in from the key input. Almost done here. Done all of them now. And now we have one more thing to do. We have to set the key input FabFilter here to the FabFilter limiter here to trigger from the key input. I'm pretty sure I have to do this for all of them. Nope, that worked. That did follow the group. So you've done one, you've done them all. So at this point, it should be all set up to work. So I'm going to expand out the window here to kind of reveal these 2 tracks I've imported. They're just audio tracks. And I've routed these audio tracks not to the bed, 1 through 10, and not to individual objects. I've routed them to the object bus we just created, the 7.1.4 object bus. So then when I press play, audio is going to be coming through this bus depending on where I pan it. And if I go to the limiter, since the limiter is all grouped together, if I mess with one limiter and kind of raise its gain and its threshold, you can see that the entire, all 12 of them are working together, and we have in fact created a 12-channel limiter for and therefore a bus limiter. And some interesting things about this, the sidechain level here, remember they're all feeding the sidechain. Each individual one is summing together through this sidechain limiter. We can reduce the gain of that master fader and kind of control the threshold of the limiter back to a reasonable level. Other thing we can do is we can well, we want to monitor loudness, right? So you can't, the loudness you monitor in the renderer itself, the levels right here integrated, and the Dolby Atmos music target is -18. So if you're doing music mixing in Dolby Atmos, you're going to want to go for that integrated level right here. And you can see we're quite loud right now. So one way would be to bring all these master faders down so we get into the target of -18. To do that, we're going to have to go back into our group. Earlier, we did not group the volume together. So let's do that for the object bed group. And I'm going to bring these faders down for all of them, down about 10 dB. And now our average level, especially if I reset it, should be in the target range of -18. It's a little less predictable than it is when working with stereo. You will figure this out on your own, but not only because things are coming through multiple channels and they're panned all over the place, just trimming the whole mix down by 10 dB does not equate to a 10 dB reduction in integrated level. You'll have to figure that out on your own. So there you go. That's a pretty cool demonstration of what has been done here. A couple side notes. You're not just limited to a limiter. If you're into fancy bus processing and you want to have a compressor or an EQ and that sort of thing, you can put those as well as on other inserts and group them together and maybe precede the limiter with an EQ or a compressor. LFE is an interesting thing. This is kind of worthy of its own video on its own, but this gives us the option to low pass the and low pass the LFE send, and we could discuss this in another video why you might want to do this, and that is not a real setting I just did. I just wanted to show you could do that. So that's another thing you probably want to do with the LFE master. Lastly, there is one other important thing to do. If you only mix and you have all your channels in your Atmos mix going to these 12 object beds and you get 7.1.4 out of it, that's fine. You won't have to do this. But if you have a single object, audio device, what's the word I'm looking for? Element, and you decide to send that to yet another bus, let's send it to another object, let's send it to object 30 here, it is going to make it off to the Dolby renderer without going through the object bed you just made. Therefore, it is not bus processed. So if you take your lead vocal, for example, and you send it through the renderer, directly to the renderer through an object, you've lost your bus processing. So how do you get around that? Well, a couple things have to happen. You're going to have to add that VO to the group, the object bed. So go into tracks, find that VO track, add it to the group so it is now part of that object bed group. Next thing is going to happen is you're going to have to option drag one of the limiters over to it, so it's going to have the same limiting as everybody else. And you're going to have to add it to the sidechain. So it's sending to the sidechain. At this point, this additional VO, I'll rewind back here so we can see the effects of it. This VO is going to trigger, unfortunately they're all grouped together there. You will, that's a problem and that's a challenge with grouping the volume. So I can undo volume there and then I'll be able to mess with the VO independently. But the VO should be triggering, as I think I just saw that, the limiter now because it is part of the same group. So this is the catch. Any and all things you send to the object bus, object bed, they will all go through the object bed, but any elements that take their own path to the renderer through an object, if you want them to be bus limited, you're going to have to add the sidechain, the limiter, and whatever plugins else you're using, and make sure they're sharing the sidechain. I know this is pretty complicated. It's definitely complicated. It's definitely an advanced thing, but it's pretty cool. And if you understand it, then you have a pretty good grapple on Pro Tools signal flow and you're ready for some awesome Atmos mixing. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.